Alright, hello, and welcome to this video. We are going to be talking about the state of the state. The state of the state that Governor Kathy Hochul gave yesterday. We're going to talk about what she left out. Obviously, my biggest complaint is the fact that she left out making any changes to the bail reform law. That has been a complete disaster in this state. All right, and we are gonna actually look at what Tom Suozzi had to say, because Tom Suozzi is somebody I'm going to probably support for we're gonna look at this article right here. All right. Hochul did not talk about bail reform at all. All right. She didn't talk about improving bail reform, fixing bail reform at all. She left that completely out. All right. And we all know what a disaster bail reform has been. And we all know where the burden of bail reform has basically been placed on, and that is communities of color, lower and middle class communities. That's where the criminals wind up on the streets. That's where they're let out of jail. And the wealthier, whitest communities avoiding most of it. So I want to first talk about this. Suozzi urges New York to dial back on bail reform. Gubernatorial candidate Tom Suozzi held a Zoom call January 4th to present his public safety policy focusing on bail and social services. The press conference was partially motivated by a recent report that murders in New York City in 2021 neared 500, a number the city hasn't reached since 2011. It's hard to even focus on this in the midst of all this other stuff going on with COVID right now, but unfortunately, when you're the chief executive, you have to focus a lot on different moving pieces, and this is something that Kathy Hochul is not very good at. She's focused on the pandemic, and she's not really focused on all this other stuff. So he is demanding that Kathy Hochul adjust bail reform laws to give judges more power to remand someone after arrest based on their possible threat to public safety. Those who have already committed a crime often commit more once they are released, and Suozzi wants this to stop happening. That policy is at the heart of a decades-long debate about the term innocent until proven guilty. We're trying to reform the system, and we're trying to make a better system. And I'm saying that we need to give judges discretion in cases where someone has a history of violent crime. We need to take into account if somebody's record has shown that person having a propensity for violence, and if they've been arrested again, that we can't let them out onto the streets again so readily. Suozzi's statement came about 2 years into the sweeping bail reform law that changed the state's practices on bail and pretrial detention. According to analysis from last year, there was a steep drop in bail setting following sharp spike in judges' decision to set bail. Those reforms' effects have been greatly diminished. Suozzi acknowledges that justice needs to happen for people in communities of color who are subject to disproportionate arrest, detention, and police presence. He said he wants to put resources in those communities to help with that. In nearly every press conference, he describes himself as a common-sense Democrat who wants both justice and public safety, not one or the other. So, like I said, I think he's really going to be a good challenger for Hochul. And, if he keeps running, I will probably vote for him in the primary, because Hochul is just out of touch with the crime. Yes, she finally is addressing what's going on in the city. All right, she finally had a press conference with Eric Adams about it. But I don't think it's so much her. I think it's Eric Adams is the one that is upset with what's happening. All right, not so much her. All right. So when we look at her state of the state here, we're going to just briefly go over it. She was talking a lot about rebuilding our healthcare economy. All right. Which we do need to do. But then she talks about public safety and basically talks about blaming guns for the crime. And this is a big problem. You can see there really isn't much on crime here. All right. Like I said, we're just going over this whole thing here. Provide pretrial services and basically gun violence. And she actually wants to let more people out of jail, I think. Invest in New York's people, tax relief for the middle class, give New Yorkers access to job skills, jails to jobs. Yeah, this is the one that she's going to make it easier for people. I mean, I'm not completely against it, but if somebody is violent, that's a different story, all right? Support the agriculture workforce, improve the food supply, protect New Yorkers, consumers, and improve financial. A new transportation plan that priorities critical projects throughout the state. She is talking about all the infrastructure projects that are going on public transportation. So basically just continuing some of the ideas that Cuomo had. Expand transit networks, eliminate rail debt. She has an interborough express. That's going to be on page 105. I mean, there's some good ideas on here. Make New York's housing system more affordable, equitable, and stable. Create and preserve 100,000 low-income rental and cooperative housing units in both urban and rural communities. And create and preserve 10,000 supportive housing units. So she definitely wants to improve housing, which is a good thing. All right, that is something that we need to do, but we're gonna look at some of these proposals here. Expand housing access, direct action to meet the homeless crisis, 10,000. Create and preserve. What is this create? Create and preserve. So are you either creating or you're just preserving what's already there? Because it needs to be, supportive housing needs to be expanded. All right. All right. Decarbonize New York's buildings. Protects New York, increasing funding for clean air and water. Expand clean air monitoring. I don't think she mentions the Pine Barrens at all, but we'll see if she does. We'll look at that in a minute. Rebuild New York school system. Advance New York as a national equity monitor, so gender equality. So that's pretty much all. There really is that much on crime or the environment, or I don't even see that much on mental health here, actually. Though she's talked about it a little bit, I don't really see that. So let's go to the 100. We'll go to the page 100 here. We've got to go all the way up to here. 100, some of these transit things that were brought up. So she wants to invest in Binghamton, Stony Brook. All right. I'm trying to get to the Interborough Express here. Some of these things are upstate. Some of these things are in our area. I think the Interborough Express is a good idea. Interborough Express. I don't know if there's a map of it in here. I think the MTA has it, actually. If we go here, Interborough Express, Interborough Express. Yeah, let's go to this here. So this is what it's going to look like here. This is the tweet from the MTA. I'll just show you where this is a map of what. So it would go from Bay Ridge. It would go through here. And it would serve some of these areas that don't have train service right now, which is a good thing. They need that. I mean, there is the G train, but this just ends at Woodside. I think it should go all the way to LaGuardia. All right, so it should serve LaGuardia. All right, it's not a bad idea. It's a good idea. The Bronx is already being worked on, but this is another idea. The Tri-Borough. I like this idea better. This is a really nice idea. I like that idea better. But I figured I'd talk about that. But let's get back to this here, because she's just leaving a lot of stuff out here. I'm glad that the Interborough Express is in here. I'm not sure if it would run as a subway or a commuter railroad. Cross Harbor Freight Tunnel. She also isn't talking about the power grid at all. The state's power grid is definitely needs to be strengthened. I don't see that here at all. So let's we're gonna go over this, and again, I'm gonna be jumping around here, so This could be a longer video than you'd like, obviously. But bring affordable. Many of these things are continuing basically the same ideas that Cuomo had. I don't really see. She said it's a new day in New York, but to me, it just seems like it's the it's a new day in New York City because there's a new mayor, and I think Eric Adams is going to take the crime real seriously, and get this problem, get the quality, improve the quality of life in many areas in New York City. Then she talks about affordable housing, so comprehensive 5-year housing plan. So you will create and preserve in both urban and rural communities. It's interesting she leaves out suburban communities. So create and preserve 10,000 supportive housing. So she embraces a housing-first approach to critical ensuring that people experiencing homelessness have access to stable housing. This plan will create 7,000 units of supportive housing and preserve 3,000 units over the next 5 years. That is I'm glad that she's doing that, but the question is, are these going to be concentrated? We need to stop the discrimination against people. If somebody is in a housing program, they should be able to get housing in anywhere. There should be housing, affordable housing in every community. That's something that needs to be addressed, because you can build more affordable units, but if you're going to place them in low-income areas, you're just going to have the propensity of crime continue. Instead of spreading them out across all the other states. Build and preserve senior housing. Again, she's not clear on where that's going to be. Spur in innovation and affordable housing. Improve the housing stock of rural rental properties. But again, she just goes rural and urban. What about suburban? Encourage the creation of safe accessory dwelling units. Spur transit-oriented development. Ease restrictions on converting hotels and offices to residential units. She's talking about 421A, and that needs to be fixed because 420A is broken. Expand housing access and equity to keep more New Yorkers in their homes. Disaster recovery. Direct action to meet the homeless crisis. Targeted plan to support populations at risk. So, she's talking about the homeless problem. She finally did talk about it. Now she's talking about climate action and green jobs. I want to get to the environment because I want to see if the Pine Barrens are even mentioned here, because I bet they're not. She's talking about, what about the power infrastructure, the lines, the power lines? There's nothing about improving power lines, the infrastructure. Phase out fossil fuel, that's okay. That's achieve net zero by 2040. More solar, decarbonize New York buildings. I'm trying to get to where there's preservation here. Harden infrastructure. All right, finally we're getting to the hardening infrastructure. LED lighting. I don't see anything about replacing poles, though. I don't see anything about replacing the poles. Our power grid needs major work. This is a very long thing, so I can't read the whole thing here. Achieve electric school buses. One thing I don't see anything about is suburban transit funding in here. Increase funding for, well, maybe we haven't gotten to it yet. Like I said, it's a big thing. Clean air, water, expand community monitoring, develop an extreme heat action plan, improve the brownfield and promote redevelopment of brownfields, reduce toxins and packaging, safeguards the state's water resources. Do I see anything? Protect wetlands that clean our water naturally. Safeguard Long Island's aquifer and water sources. The State University of New York and Stony Brook for clean wastewater treatment. There's nothing about preserving the Pine Barrens here. Nothing about it. I don't even think the Pine Barrens are mentioned. Protect New York The Catskills and Adirondacks. What about the Pine Barrens? She doesn't care about the Pine Barrens. It's obvious. So, yeah, I'm pretty disappointed in a lot of this stuff, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of shortcomings here in this. You can see, and again, it's just, she says harden infrastructure, but she doesn't talk about replacing poles at all. All right, we're going to go back up here. As I said, it's going to be all over the place, and this is a disorganized. Support congestion and reduce traffic, generate funding for transit. We haven't seen her budget yet, so we're going to have to see. She can say all that she wants in here, but we have to see the budget. All right, for transit. All right, we already went through these transit projects already. Again, you could have all the projects you want, but if you're not funding the existing transportation, I don't really see anything about improving suburban bus transportation in here at all. All right, deliver the third track project, obviously. That's something that just continues with Cuomo. That was modernize your Kew Gardens interchange. She talks about fixing some of the problem road areas. Obviously, Channel 12 is talking about that, especially with the Oakdale merge, because that's on the South Shore. Let's see. I don't really see anything. There's nothing about the Pine Barrens. Schools. Pass the Clean Slate Act. Yeah, see, she wants to... This is crime right here. The Clean Slate Act. This is a disaster. New Yorkers with a conviction. Stigma of a criminal record. So more criminals are going to be put on the streets. Jobs to jail. There's no mention at all about fixing bail reform. There's just nothing about it. There's nothing about it here. There's nothing about it. I mean, some of these are good ideas. I'm not going to say everything in here is bad, but she left a lot of important stuff out of here. And that's a big problem. And that's why we have the article. That's the Oakdale merge. It's in Channel 12, of course, because that's the South Shore. We all know that already. But she left out a lot of her stuff. The Clean Slate Act. That's seal the felony records of many incarcerated people. She don't care about our public safety. She goes there and stands with Eric Adams and says, we care about cleaning up crime. You want more criminals out on the streets. You want to make it easier for them to get into people's communities. So this is a very long article here about a lot of the stuff she left out. But it's really ridiculous, and okay, we gotta go to another article here. Because honestly, I think this is a better agenda from the GOP. The 22 Take Back New York agenda. All right. They prioritize public safety, reducing the cost of living, and increasing access to quality and strengthening the war. They also had something else in here about mental health too. And 3,500 victims of violent crimes committed in the state in 2021 were by people released without bail. All right, so this is the disaster that, and she did not mention the bail reform. And this is the thing. Andrea Cousins said the majority does not desire changing the law, so they don't want to change the bail reform law, which is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. They do not want to listen. This is a disaster. Eric Adams realizes it's a disaster. Bruce Blakeman realizes it's a disaster. He's calling for the repeal of bail reform. Tom Suozzi realizes it. But no, because bail reform is a key part of the plan. Dump the criminals into all the communities of color in the middle of the island and in lower income communities across the state and the only people who are going to be safe are going to be places that people like us are not allowed to live in. That's how the core of the plan works. And then you have Manhattan DA. He's going to stop seeking prison sentences in slew of criminal cases. So while there are a lot of good ideas floating around out there, look at this. He wants a lot of criminals, violent criminals, out on the streets. This Manhattan DA, he was just elected. His name is Bragg, whatever. He won't lock up bad guys for a slew of crimes. So this is what's going on in the state. It's all disappointing. And I know it's just a mishmash of different things. Maybe you could have done a better job of organizing it. But it's clear that Kathy Hochul's state of the state and the direction of the state as a whole is not good. It's going to make it harder. No matter what she says. No matter what she says, we pull up the maps and we realize the consequences of those policies. Bail reform. Now, I think Eric Adams is going to try to do a good job trying to make New York City safe. But it's going to be an uphill battle because of bail reform. It's going to be an uphill battle for him, all right? Because as long as the bail reform is around, you're going to have these criminals on the street. So what could wind up happening is we could see criminals pushed out of the city and pushed onto Long Island and in other areas. And you know where they're going to wind up? In the middle of the island. And then it falls into Bruce Blakeman's lap. Is Bruce Blakeman going to make Nassau County safe? Or is he just going to look out for the South Shore like everybody else has been doing? And that is the question. But we all know the crux of the plan is you put the problems in communities of color. You put the problems in middle income areas. All right. And we still don't know the transportation budgets that Kathy Hochul has provided. We don't know. They could wind up being a reduction in funding for bus services, suburban bus services in New York, or it won't be improved. And then we're going to see big cuts, which is, again, a part of the plan. Again, make life harder for the middle class, make life harder for those with disabilities and the seniors. Despite what she says in her state of the state, her policies make our lives harder. All right? They make our lives harder. So they make our lives harder because let's just get her on the screen here. I think she's on the screen here, right? All right. So her policies are going to make lives harder for the people she claims that she wants to help. We start off with her leaving out bail reform, all right? Not addressing the crime. All right, we need to improve services and access to the mental health services, homeless. That's good, but a lot of them just refuse to be helped. What do you do with people who refuse to be helped? And you can't force them to get help. What happens is they're going to continue to live on the streets. What are you going to do with people with criminal records? All right? Bail reform, all right? Instead of going to jail, they're out in the streets. They're homeless. A lot of them are homeless. They wind up in people's communities. And we all know the communities that they're going to wind up in are the communities where the people you claim to help live. The disabled, the middle class, the working class, and people of color. That's where those criminals are going to wind up. And those people are going to suffer, while the whitest communities, particularly those with money connected to finance, will be looked after. The homeless will be moved on. The criminals won't be dumped there because those people won't have it. All right? So you're not helping us with that, Kathy. You're not helping us with that. All right? And I'm glad you want to expand. You didn't really even bring up mental health. You spoke about improving housing, but you didn't really bring up about mental health. About mental health funding. You also didn't bring up improving suburban public transportation. You talked about the Long Island Railroad, but you never talked about improving suburban public transportation, particularly that on Long Island, particularly bus services. We don't know what her budget is going to be. It could be, like I said, it could make things a lot worse. We don't know. We don't know. She comes across very much like Cuomo, just very domineering. And she just doesn't seem like she really cares about the people when she talks. She doesn't care. She's spinning things to make it look like she cares, but the reality of it is that she doesn't give a crap about the average New Yorker. She's looking out for a certain demographic, just like her predecessor, just like everybody else. The majority of people in state government are looking out for a certain demographic, all right? And they can say that they care about us, but when we look at their actions, it's a totally different story. All right. let's go to the Take Back New York plan from the GOP. I think I'll wrap it up with that. All right, because we're going to just go to that. All right. We're going to go to the Take Back New York. All right. Which I think is much better than what has been put forth by the governor and the Democratic Party in New York State. Offer a better quality of life for all New Yorkers by repealing bail reform and supporting law enforcement and crime victims, as well as expanding and ensuring access to a quality education for all our children. Make New York more affordable for every resident, obviously by changing the taxes and making making it more affordable. All right. Develop a strong workforce. Improve our business climate by cutting burdensome regulations, investing in physical infrastructure, all right, which the governor, again, really wasn't clear on infrastructure at all. Enhance security for our vulnerable populations by securing funding for our veterans, providing needed resources to our seniors and their care, and accommodating and better treating mental wellness. Now, they did talk about mental health funding. I don't know why I can't find the thing, but they talk about that. Restore accountability of state government. So, honestly, I think this is a better thing. And, of course, the key to this is repealing bail reform. Bail reform must be repealed. And right now, there is no will at the state government level by the people that are in power right now. That would be the governor. That would be, it doesn't seem like Carl Heastie is interested. It doesn't seem like the Assembly Majority Leader Stuart Cousins is interested in. And this needs to change. This is why Tom Suozzi is, I think, the right direction that this state needs to be heading in right now. We need a more centrist Democrat. Right now we have liberal Democrats in charge. I like to call them limousine liberals because they're looking out for the rich. They claim they're looking out for us. They like to say that they're looking out for us and try to fool us. But the reality is things like bail reform are putting the burden on communities of color. Middle-class communities. Those criminals are going to be dumped on our streets. They are being dumped on our streets. While the certain demographic communities, or those on the South Shore, some on the North Shore, they get to sit pretty and safe. They don't have to deal with the crap we have to deal with. They don't have to deal with homeless people hanging out at their train stations, harassing people and yelling at themselves. They don't have to deal with that. We do. All right? So that's pretty much been my thoughts on this whole thing. And, you know, I hope that Bruce Blakeman will really help us here with this. I really do. All right. You know, I think I really do. I hope he will help us, but I could see a real clash between him and Kathy Hochul. There is a clash between him and Kathy Hochul, especially on this mask mandate, which is ridiculous. Again, we have a one-issue governor that's not really good. The governor is not good at tackling multiple issues. And I think Suozzi really made that point. And here's the key here. When you're the chief executive, you have to focus on a lot of different moving pieces. And Kathy Hochul is simply not capable of doing that. She has shown that. And let's hope that she is challenged and loses in the primary, because if she doesn't, because New York State, chances are New York State is not going to elect a Republican. We get basically 4 more years of Kathy Hochul, and she will finish the plan. Oh, she claims she's helping us. But the harsh reality of what will happen is we're going to have more problems dumped in our communities in the middle of the island. All right, that's Mineola, New Hyde Park, Westbury, Hicksville, maybe even Plainview. The whole middle of the island is going to deal with this. All right, and yes, you may improve access to affordable housing, but guess where it's going to all be put? Middle of the island. All right, it's not going to be put on the South Shore, and more criminals will be on our streets. We're going to see more and more problems, while places like Belmore, they'll just sit pretty down here on the South Shore. They'll just enjoy their lives like nothing is wrong, all right? Well, we're going to continue to suffer, all right? And again, if you don't like it, then sorry. Well, you're going to have to go live somewhere else. And then there's the Pine Barrens. She hasn't even mentioned the Pine Barrens. She hasn't even mentioned preserving the Pine Barrens at all. So we're going to see the Pine Barrens under threat, continually under threat. She should be doing something about all these development plans in the Pine Barrens and having the state come in and say, you can't do that. But no, that's not happening. She's more focused on the Adirondacks. That's New York State. You go to I Love New York. That's all they have commercials for. Upstate. Never the Pine Barrens. Never. The only state that takes their Pine Barrens seriously is New Jersey. And again, if this governor gets 4 more years, that really makes it very likely that I'm going to be, whether I like it or not, I'm going to have to go live in New Jersey. And that is going to suck. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.